that I believe the time is now for the United States to end capital punishment.
I support the death penalty because under certain cases, it's a just punishment for truly horrible crimes.
This conviction has led me from the beginning of my ministry to advocate at different levels the global abolition of the death penalty.
The Eighth Amendment prohibits the federal government from requiring excessive bail, imposing excessive fines, or inflicting cruel and unusual punishments. A controversy that has yet to be resolved, and one that we have taken personal interest in, is whether or not capital punishment, or the death penalty, violates these rights. To begin, here are some fast facts about capital punishment. As of 2016, 58 countries still have the death penalty. The United States is a part of this list, being the only Western democracy left that still has the death penalty. Methods of capital punishment include lethal injection, electrocution, gas chamber, firing squad, and hanging. So what are the pros of the death penalty? Firstly, the punishment fits the crime. Capital punishment is reserved for only criminals of the most heinous nature. Not every murderer is sentenced to the death penalty. Capital punishment can also provide justice and closure for the families of victims of murderers who have been sentenced to the death penalty. Another important thing to consider is that the enforcement of capital punishment has been linked to reduced murder rates in various statistical studies. An example of this can be found in a study conducted by Emory University. They concluded that each execution, on average, resulted in 18 fewer murders per county, based on data from over 3,000 counties. Another study, led by Federal Communications Commission economist Paul Zimmerman, concluded that each state execution deters an average of 14 murders annually, based on all 50 of our states. And lastly, capital punishment has been accepted by the majority of Americans. Polls have found that 61% of Americans view the death penalty as morally acceptable. So how about the cons? Well, the debate mostly revolves around what can be defined as cruel and unusual punishment. We still cannot be sure whether or not capital punishment is cruel or unusual. But it cannot be overlooked that not every execution is carried out smoothly. In fact, here are some statistics on botched executions.
Due to the relationship the Eighth Amendment has with law enforcement, specifically in regards to the death penalty as cruel and unusual punishment, we decided to interview Officer Borsheim of Bellevue High School to get the perspective of someone who'd have more exposure to such circumstances.
It really doesn't. 5% is not a very high percentage. However, if you're one of those 5%, I understand that that's means the world to you, obviously. I haven't done enough research on this. Is it due to unexperienced physicians, or?
Most of the time it's because inexperienced physicians don't put the needles in the right spots, but there are some cases where like the chemicals aren't, like, they don't put in enough, or it's not, it just doesn't work.
They've done their
and that's obviously something they can't really control.
Yeah. I mean, you're always gonna have a human error element in pretty much everything that you do. It doesn't change my opinion.
When we were discussing pros of the death penalty, we revealed studies that showed capital punishment to deter crime rates. However, can we directly say that the death penalty prevents murder?
I don't. And I use an analogy of things all the time with the fact of security cameras in stores. Every everybody knows that Target, Fred Meyer, Home Depot, Nordstrom's, they have security cameras, right? They still have shoplifters. So if people know that there's ways to stop something and they still continue to do it, then not that a security camera is going to convict you or arrest you or kill you in the case of capital punishment, but knowing that there's a consequence. Everybody knows that stealing is illegal, correct? And everybody knows that assault, punching somebody in the nose is illegal, but yet it still happens. So I don't necessarily believe that consequences always deter people from committing these acts. Otherwise, nothing would happen because we know there's a consequence for our actions, right?
Our last point is that there are various cases where people sentenced to death are later proven innocent. This is just a small percentage of cases that have been executed and later proven innocent. All of these individuals were wrongly accused, yet faced the most brutal of punishments that their families later had to deal with the results of. Studies have found that 1 in 25 people sentenced to death are later found innocent. So after all this, we are still conflicted as to whether or not the death penalty violates the Constitution. But that is okay, because we are not the only ones. It is still a good debate topic and has many pros and cons, as we have shown you. So the only thing left is to ask you, where do you stand?